I just ask you, because there has been, I think, an attempt to have a different kind of unified messaging, a unified rationale. Certainly from the Pentagon, we heard Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth say, America is winning decisively, devastatingly, and without mercy. What is your understanding of the progress of this war on Iran?
Well, first of all, I have no idea why we entered this war, because Donald Trump has one story and Marco Rubio has another story. Rubio says we got dragged into the war by Israel. He's effectively said that this was a defensive action because we worried there was going to be an attack on the United States. Donald Trump says no, in fact, we dragged Israel into this war. They have lots of different goals. They seem to be targeting the nuclear program, the missile program. Trump seems to be talking pretty regularly about regime change, cheerleading the Iranian people to come out into the streets. It's really unclear to me, even after having sat in the briefing yesterday, why we entered the war and what the goals are. It looks as if it's pretty open-ended, that we may be at war with Iran, bombing Iran for months, if not the better part of this year. This is about as incoherent, incompetent, and confusing a rollout of military action overseas as I've ever seen.
Can I just stop you there and pick up on what you just said? Months or the better part of the rest of this year? That's 11 months to be precise. Israel, as we know, has done that in Gaza for 2 years after October 7th. You think that the United States is capable of bombing a country for a whole nother year?
So this is what I heard yesterday. Though Donald Trump has talked about regime change, and certainly Israel is talking about regime change, and of course this has to be a regime change operation because they specifically targeted the Ayatollah and many people surrounding him, it doesn't actually seem like we care too much who runs the country. Our intelligence services acknowledge that it'll be hardliners that will still be committed to provocation in the region and rebuilding a missile program and rebuilding a nuclear program. And it doesn't appear that we are going to support the Iranian people in their efforts to overtake the regime and start a transition to democracy. So if that's all true, the only way that you can stop Iran from restarting its missile program, restarting its nuclear program, restarting its drone program is to be constantly bombing Iran. Every time they try to start a new drone factory, you bomb that factory. That seems to be the administration's plan right now. That's a recipe for almost endless war in the region. That's, I think, would be shocking to the American people, but I don't really know any other way to read their strategy or their explanation of their strategy.
Senator, do you think, if you've looked at the polls, right, you know what the American people are thinking. What are they thinking? You know, often when a country goes to war, people rally around the flag, etc. Are they doing that? What are your polls telling you?
Well, I mean, people have no idea why we're at war with Iran. The president did, absolutely no work at explaining to the American people why this was essential. Even back in the Iraq War days, though that was never, that ended up being a very unpopular war, the president explained it to the American people. Donald Trump hasn't told folks why we're doing this. It's going to be increasingly unpopular. It's already supported by only maybe 30% of the American public, but as prices continue to go up, oil prices, the price of groceries go up, as more Americans get killed, and we were told in no uncertain terms yesterday in the briefing that more Americans are going to die, this is going to become maybe the most unpopular military engagement in the history of the country. And a president whose approval ratings are already around 30% are going to plummet into the 20s and the teens. This shouldn't be about politics, but nobody in America wants this war, and even fewer who just back the president on whatever he does because he's their guy are going to be along for this ride in the long run.
Senator, you mentioned the Iranian people, and of course, we all watched what happened in late December, early January, the demonstrations, the brutal crackdown, the killing of thousands of Iranian protesters. The president clearly, and so did Netanyahu, call on them to rise up, that's the Prime Minister of Israel, and that help would be on the way. The president and Netanyahu again asked them and called on them to do that once the war had already started on Saturday. What did you hear from Secretary Rubio about the commitment to helping the Iranian people if indeed they do take America up on what it's urging them to do, and that is protest and try to overthrow their regime?
So it appears to me that we are not willing, that the Trump administration is not willing, based upon the comments that they have made to us, to support the Iranian people in their efforts to depose this regime and start a transition to a democracy. And that is unforgivable, given the fact that, as you mentioned, Donald Trump has told the Iranian people to get out into the streets. But if they go out into the streets, they're going to be slaughtered. The Iranian military is still very powerful. We maybe have taken out their missile capability, but we haven't taken out their ability to wage war domestically on the streets of Iran. And if we are going to encourage the Iranian people to come out on the streets and then pull the rug out from under them, not give them the support that they need. And by the way, an air campaign doesn't help them in peaceful protest. That would have to be American ground forces. It seems that we are readying to leave the Iranian people out to dry.